Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual reception for Stuff, celebrating Dianne Smith's multimedia installation artwork now on view at Barnard College, as well as the 45th anniversary of the Broadway debut of Ntozake Shange's groundbreaking choreo poem for colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough. My name is Martha Tenney. I'm the director of the archives at Barnard College, and I'm so glad to be here with you all tonight. I'd like to begin by honoring the land, even as we meet virtually from different locations. All land is Indigenous land. I'm speaking to you from the unceded land of the Lenape people. We honor all past, present, and future generations of Indigenous people. At the risk of forgetting, we name and commit to keep naming the histories of this institution. Both Barnard College and Columbia University were founded in settler colonial and anti-Black violence and exclusion. I use this acknowledgement not as a rote exercise, but as a way of committing us to imagining the tangible ways in which we will together end settler colonialism and racial capitalism. Thank you for joining us to do some of this imagining tonight. I'd like to share some background. In 2013, the college celebrated Ntozake Shange, Barnard class of 1970, with a public symposium, The Worlds of Ntozake Shange. Over the 5 following years, Ntozake was a constant and wonderful presence at Barnard, visiting classes, delivering lectures, donating her papers to the archives, and bringing her vibrancy, wit, and warmth back to the campus where she had come to voice 40 years earlier. In the wake of her passing in 2018, we started the Shange Magic Project, a 2-year celebration of Zaki's life and legacy. The Shange Magic Project is a joint effort of Africana Studies and the Barnard Library, with support from a Barnard Presidential Research Award. And I want to specifically acknowledge the vision of Africana Studies Professor Kim Hall and all those who have worked on the Shange Magic Project. So now we're on to the show for tonight. We're here to celebrate Stuff, an exhibit curated by Solio with artwork by Dianne Smith. We're going to begin this evening with a special message from award-winning playwright, producer, and conceptual theater artist, as well as Zaki's sister, Ifa Baisa. I'll play that introduction now.
You want to know about my sister? I could write a book. In fact, we did, but that was fiction. The nonfiction is stranger and certainly as dramatic. Even before she was Ntozake, my sister came with her own things, her stuff. I remember distinctly the moment I realized that. It was my first day of school when she gave me my first lesson in writing. My first day at kindergarten. I came home from school so proud of myself. Our cousin Catherine that summer had taught me how to write my name, so when the teacher got to that part of the lesson, I told her, I already know how to do that. I rushed home across the street and bragged to my sister and demonstrated how on my fat lined paper with my big red pencil in firm straight letters I had written my name. But my sister, my pal, Palette I used to call her, with all the 7-year-old swag she could muster, said, That's not writing. This is writing. And she took her thin yellow pencil and began to etch her name across the page, looping curls that made me dizzy just to look at them, in swells that lifted you like the ocean, letters that danced across the page. It was rapturous. I was enchanted, enthralled by the choreography of her hand, the dance of it. My own name now seemed a bunch of shorn, spindly trees, huddled together in the winter, while hers was a wonder of waves, dancing crests across a white sapphire sea. Writing. I had to learn how to do that. Many years later, after Zaki had endured multiple catastrophic illnesses, in desolation and turmoil, battling one crippling ailment after another, learning how to walk, how to talk, hold a pen, she was back with a show at the Schomburg, the Shelley, the Hurston Wright, high honors at her blessed alma mater, Barnard, and plans for colored girls to return to Broadway. We had both taken to using those black and white college composition books from the dollar store. This one, there was this one, her last one, I found among her things, so well used It looked partially consumed. In it were phone numbers and notes and a big erratic scrawl. On one page, with fat sharpies of bright teal and magenta, in a jagged, emphatic script, she was learning how to write again by practicing her name. Ntozake Shange, Ntozake Shange, Ntozake Shange, Ntozake Shange. Each effort stronger and more sure than the last. On the next page was an outline for her new book. Rushing thought, sweating underarms, breathing calm, laughter, fingers at keyboard, music, rhythm, imagine, vision, old friends, heroes appear, more laughter, stomach full, spirit sated, satisfaction guaranteed. My sister, my pal, Ntozake Shange. Her words dance across the page. She who walks like a lion and comes with her own things, Ntozake Shange, into eternity. Your words dance.
Hello, hi. My name is Solio, and I am the curator of Stuff. And today we have a wonderful program for you. Those were such beautiful remarks, and we have more beautiful remarks. But before we get into our discussion with our special guest, let's check out the Stuff installation at Barnard in this short 2-minute video.
I am trying to continue Ntozake Shange's legacy of telling stories of women of color and telling in a very deep and meaningful and universal way. I transformed spaces with brown butcher paper. I likened it to skin. It's at once fragile and durable. And when I think of the black and brown skin, who we are as people of the diaspora, we are fragile, but we are strong. Look at what we have been through, and we are still here.
There's an entry point for the viewer to enter at many different points. The paper draws you in 3 different videos, and they're talking about so many heavy, important issues in a way that is artistic and relatable. And then you have these beautiful, regal-looking mannequin heads. And then, in addition, you have the archival material from the library that gives context to the exhibition and a historical perspective, and looking back at Ntozake Shange's amazing creation for colored girls who considered suicide when the rainbow is enough.
Last summer, I had the pleasure of going to see the play at the Public Theater. Ntozake Shange's message to women was that of empowerment, of being seen and heard. My message to women is about reclamation. We go through things, but how we go through them and how we attend to what we go through and come out on the other side is important. Lady in Green is talking about somebody walked off with all of my stuff. She's not only talking about the man in her life, but she's talking about systemic racism. She's talking about notions of whiteness. She's talking about power structures that keep women like her oppressed. This work is so poignant now because we're living in a time where Black women are feeling unheard, underrepresented, not seen, not listened to. So I think this work allows a space for that to be true.
Barnard College is Ntozake Shange's alma mater. And the significance of being here, this is where her archives live. So this is where part of her legacy is. The things that she was talking about in For Color Girls are issues that are universal. It's not the first time we're dealing with issues of domestic violence or racism or sexism. And so you look back at what she was writing in the 70s, and you can see how, wow, there's a history to this, and there's someone who was brave enough to speak out. And so when you see this installation, you see that, that celebration of who she was and what she did and how many people she inspired.
Okay, so that was a little background on Stuff, but now it's time to meet our special guest. Please welcome multidisciplinary artist Dianne Smith and multidisciplinary performing artist Okwe Okpokwasili. How are you, ladies?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
So good. What a beautiful exhibit and a beautiful tribute. Thank you, y'all. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here, and want to get into the discussion. So Dianne, I want to start with you. as we saw in that video, and it's a lot within 2 minutes, so I want to make sure everyone in the audience understands, there's many layers to your installation. There's the butcher paper, there are the 3 videos, one which documents 7 women's different experiences with somebody trying to take away their stuff. We have the the mannequin heads with the adorned in the African fabric. So tell me about how you layered this installation drawing from Ntozake's work.
Well, just thinking about that work in general, it's layered in itself, it's texture. Her work is multidisciplinary anyway. They're choreo poems, so it's infused with dance and music and the reverberation of the women's voices. So I just really wanted to attend to that and bring that to life visually, but still being authentic to who I am creatively. I think that people experience works of art in multiple ways. So it's important for me to create installations where there are multiple entry points for the viewer. You can have an auditory experience, you can have a purely aesthetic experience. But the bottom line is, I think the work in general, or my intention is to force you to attend to whatever you're bringing to the work. I always quote the philosopher Maxine Greene that says that the viewer brings themselves to the work, lends themselves to the work of art. And so I always create with that in mind. And so it was important for me to be able to tell the story of as many women as I could in such a short, in such a condensed way, in multiple ways. So the 7 heads are wrapped in West African print. For one, Africa is our mother, no matter where we come from and no matter where we look like. And we cannot get away from that, no matter how much style that we're in. So although my central focus is women of the African diaspora, I'm talking to women in general. So it made sense for me to use the fabric to represent that, but it also represents the 7 women who are in the center video, which also includes me, that tell their stories about someone walking off with all of their stuff. The first video, and we'll get into that a little bit later, I'm sure,
Yes.
Centers around my experience, my personal experience with someone walking off with all of my stuff. And the third video just really talks about when somebody takes your things, your tangible items, or robs you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. When you think about the impact of those 2 things, although seemingly different, you are left with some of the same feelings. And so that third video speaks to that, and it's my voice orating the poem, personal, making it very personal to me.
And you said something really interesting about Ntozake's work being layered. And so one of the ways that For Color Girls was so groundbreaking was because it mixed music, dance, poetry, theater, all within one piece of work. And you both identify as multidisciplinary artists. So tell me, how does Ntozake's legacy resonate with your own creative journey and identity as artists? And we can start with you, Okwi.
Well, I have to say that the first time I came upon For Color Girls, I must have been about 15 years old. And, I was like, I had actually been writing little plays since I was very young, but I was looking for plays, and somehow I came upon this. And I remember it was my first encounter with language that I understood. Like I could hear them speaking, but I was too young to understand maybe the depth of the experience. But I do remember very specifically thinking, what is a choreo poem? What does that actually mean? Is that a play? And so she is the first time and the first artist, the first woman of color that was both speaking to me, but also posing a question that I couldn't answer, right? And then to go to college and to see many productions of it and to see that it manifested differently in different bodies, and to see that she had created a piece where the text was so grounded, right, in experience. However, the form was so open to whatever encounter an artist would have with it. so she was my first, in a way, experience of also a kind of groundbreaking avant-garde,
Mm-hmm.
like a text that had questions of form that I couldn't answer. And so I loved her for that, because I think in the work that I do, I'm always trying to also what is the language, what is the context and the framework to share this particular story and experience, right? And I think encountering Ntozake when I did, just made me think of what is the potential, how do we liberate ourselves from other people's expectations, other people's beliefs about what we should and shouldn't do you know what I mean? And so I have to
Exactly.
say that is I am forever grateful to her for that.
Awesome. Dianne, did you want to add to that? About because you're multidisciplinary, you work in all sorts of mediums, materials. How does Ntozake's approach as well impact your direction as an artist?
Well, I for me, it's really important to be able to articulate my voice the way I want to,
Mm-hmm.
and unapologetically so. Is really important. And working in the space of visual arts, that's not always the case, right? Because there's a whole thing that tries to put you in a space in a box. And what I appreciate about Ntozake's work is that it was non-conforming,
Mm-hmm.
because she presented a work in a way that no one else had presented. And I am going to suspect that she was not concerned about who was going to be accepting of this work. What she was concerned about was her articulation of her voice and the multiple ways that she could do that. So for me, her her um, her work, whether indirectly or directly, has always been very important to me. And if you will, gives license to the way in which I create.
Wow. And
Yeah, because I'm sorry, so Leo.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just wanted to say also, when people think of what should be on stage, there are so many ways in which they weren't coming to African American women, they weren't coming to African women and being like, well, how would you tell this story? For so often we had to fit within a particular framework. And I felt like Ntozake was like, no, there's language, we're rich in spoken language, but the body itself also has a particular valence and language. And these things in relationship create a dynamic ecology and world and space. So not only do I think this idea of theater, this idea of dance is limiting, but I'm suggesting that there are all of these strategies and parts of articulation that we need to tap into and open up to. And obviously, she was a dancer. She studied multiple types of dance from, we're talking from like Latin, Cuba to like, different West African, so she was also obviously continually a student. But the idea, she was like, all of these things together kind of speak of a rich world. And and my voice should not be relegated to one idea of voice is also what the body is doing, what the skin feels, so anyway, that's all. I'm sorry, that's all I want to say.
One quick tech thing. So some people are saying that they can't see all of the speakers. So make sure you have it on gallery view. And if our tech team can just make sure that the audience has the ability to make sure they can see everyone on gallery view, that'd be great. So moving along. So Oakley, I want to ask you about that because you played Lady in Green in the 2019 Public Theater Revival. And that's the role that was played by originally Paula Moss. Alfre Woodard played her. Loretta Devine played her in the movie we won't talk about. And so many other greats have played that role. So for each of those actresses, Ntozake was alive at the time and was in some way involved in those projects, but you stepped into the role without Ntozake being there to help guide and inform your work. So what was your approach to playing Lady in Green?
Yeah, when you said that, it made me feel like, wow, I'm a little bit poorer for that. You know what I mean? It's a little, it's it's a bit of a shame. However, I have to say that her language, she gives me everything in her language. She gives me space. She gives me specificity. I feel like in some way she has the map is right there in the language. So as much as I would have loved to be near her, to have her speak to me, to maybe tell me about, like, well, who specifically was, the N with the curly, what was it? It's so funny I have to say the whole word. Nail with the curls in your hair.
Mr.
Mr. Louisiana, Mr. Louisiana Hot Link.
Right.
I would have liked to.
Yeah.
Yes, with the curls in your hair. I was thinking with the curls in your hair. Like, I would have loved to be able to say, who was that, right? Was that one person? Was that a multitude of people? Like, who took what of your stuff did this one take, and what did that one take? It would have been nice to just hear her story.
And, one of the central themes in the poem and in the entire For Color Girls work is gender and race. And I want to ask you, when did each of you become conscious of the ways in which gender and race, both on a personal and a systemic level, impacted your life and work? Dianne.
I think for me, race became something apparent in a very different way by the time I hit my late teens to early 20s, because I left my home, my Bronx community, where I mostly saw people that looked like me, and ventured out into the world and went to art school, which was a very, very different experience. And how I was received was really, really sort of a shock to me. And I really didn't have context for it until much later in life. And then by my later 20s, coming back to New York, and still in my early 20s, like 2021, I think one of the most pivotal moments for me was during the Central Park Five era in New York. And I remember, again, being very young, but in my heart did not feel those boys were guilty, and felt that there was a machine at play to have them be guilty. And so that was, and then I believe, though, that was around the time of Eleanor Bumpers and Michael Griffin. So these things were happening, and it was the first time that I could sort of make connections between some of the things that I watched as a kid with my dad. So which, surprises me that people are surprised by the insurrection, because some of the things I used to watch with my dad growing up was 60 Minutes. And I remember that they would show these programs with militia groups training to overthrow the government, like 60 Minutes on a Sunday. And so those, memories came back. So those were very defining moments for me in really beginning to understand race. And then living outside of America very young, going to live in Europe at a very young age, really understanding my Black female identity from an objectified perspective.
Oakley, how about yourself? When did you become conscious of that?
I feel like I was conscious from a really young age, and but it was also of like being Black, being dark skinned, being Nigerian, having parents who spoke different languages, sounded a little bit different from everybody around on the block. Also being in a space where we have is African people, African American people, Irish, Jewish, Italian. We have Vietnamese folks, Cambodian folks coming as a result of all of the wars. Let's say the sort of vestiges of imperialism happening in Asia, Korean folks, Chinese folks. So I just felt, people from the Dominican Republic, Cuban, Puerto Rican. It just felt like I was very conscious at an early age of how rich the world I actually lived in was, and how we were not reflected. This richness, this multiplicity was not reflected in popular culture because I was also like, you know, a ravenous TV watcher. So I just started to write plays when I was 7 because I was thinking I felt in some way that not seeing that reflection in popular culture indicated a kind of death to me, signified some kind of social death. I felt it was a problem at that age, so I wanted to write the world that I knew into existence. But from a very early age too, you know, I knew that I was very much very far away from the spaces of visibility as a Black woman, as a dark-skinned woman, as an African woman. So I always I felt that acutely. I've always been quite sensitive to the space, to the spaces around me, and the complications, the dissonances. But and it's true. I also grew up in the time of the Central Park Five, of what happened in Bensonhurst and Howard Beach. I'm not remembering the name of those boys who were killed, and it did feel like we were under siege, you know. And then sitting and watching Roots with my parents, like every time there was a Black person on TV, it was just like this big, everybody come and see something remarkable. So even that, like here we can see ourselves.
Oh, that is.
And I think it was really important. I think that Ntozake, she wanted everyone to be able to see themselves. And I think moving on from the gender and race part, I want to touch a little bit on the romantic aspects of relationships, romantic relationships that she talks about within Somebody Must Walk Up With All of My Stuff. And, you know, when you think about this text, what memories are evoked for each of you around the conversation of romance and love when you revisit this work?
Oh, you want me to take that one first?
Please.
Well, I think it's important then to speak about the first video that's in the installation, which is in relationship to domestic violence. So at the time that you presented this opportunity and talked to me about this commission, it was overlapped with a domestic violence issue in my own life. And, you know, I was 49 at the time, never having that be a part of my life. And I think that was around the same time of the Ray Rice incidents of his wife, and just thinking about how people were so quick to put the onus and the responsibility on her for his actions, right? Whether directly or indirectly, which is usually what happens, particularly when Black women are the victims of something. It's like there is a space of blame. And people in my own life were saying things, and I remember inboxing a few people before I had put the work in the installation, my face, because I began recording it that night. And I was like, this happened to me. And I really, really wanted to change the discourse surrounding domestic violence and what people perceived it to be, because I could be accused of many things. Low self-esteem ain't one of them. And not being smart is not the other. I could be accused of some stuff, but those two things you can't accuse me of. And my point was that there is no prescribed person that comes into the woman's life that becomes an abuser, and there is no prescribed woman who is hit in a relationship. So it just seemed very appropriate to attend to this work with the same level of authenticity and transparency as Ntozake wrote it.
And Oakley, how about yourself? When you think about romance and love and the challenges and joys even within those, and this work, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I just think about what it is to love somebody, and the fact that there has to be, I would think, right, some giving, right, some generosity. And how do you hold enough of yourself, right? How do you stay generous, but at the same time understand when somebody is taking more than they're giving, or taking and about to leave you behind. And you know, I have a partner. He's my creative partner, my collaborative partner, and it can get quite entangled, but there's somehow a way we understand something about boundaries, or like what is the hurt that you would want to do to somebody? Why would you, like the idea of somebody wants to take something from you.
Mm.
And I feel like I have been fortunate enough to really not have had that happen, though in some of my pieces I do think about the problem of young girls, sexual awakening, trying to be connected to desire, right? But somehow protected to folks who would do violence on them, right? Because, you always hear about people being like, well, why is she doing this? Why is she doing that? I'm like, why shouldn't a woman feel herself? Why shouldn't she feel good, look good? Like, why shouldn't she understand what gives her pleasure? Why is that license, right, to take and abuse? And so, I think women really navigate this tricky space in this culture. And a lot of my work is trying to address some of that.
Can I just add to that? And I think that was really beautiful. I just want to not leave this conversation with me talking about domestic violence and having the audience or anyone walk away with a certain idea or perception of how my life was impacted or not. It's not stopped me from falling in love again, because I've done that several times since then. And I'll probably do it more. I love being in love with Black men. I love being around Black men. But sometimes you make a bad investment.
Well,
Right, but it's also, it's not your problem. Like when someone,
Exactly.
and so that's always the thing. How many times do we see what just happened with the women in Atlanta, the Asian women,
Right.
and there's this tendency to give a lot of care to the murderer, and to either dismiss or suggest somehow that those women are responsible for what happened to them, and they are not.
And that's why it was really important for me to use this footage, because there was a point where I found myself with a cap over my eye, and I was like, why am I doing that? This is not something that I am ashamed of, as in I did something. That was like a moment, and it did not stay. So me saying that I did fall in love again several times, and I probably will continue to do so, is to say exactly that. I took no ownership of it. You understand what I'm saying? It was not something that became part of my my sort of DNA, if you will, that I carry like a badge of honor, like, oh, woe is me. It's nothing like that. And
well, I think you bring up an interesting point. I want to start bringing in some audience questions, so I'll loop this into that. One of the questions we got was, what are your thoughts on Black women's healing and the role that for colored girls, and even this specific poem, Somebody Almost Walked Up With All of My Stuff, plays in that process?
Do you want me to?
Whoever.
Well, I think that's really important. So for me, what did healing look like, right? And I'm not even sure that I actually thought that I needed to heal from something specifically outside of the actual Black eye. But I don't think that I felt like I had any emotional scars or baggage I needed to heal from. Yeah, I just didn't feel that. And I think the reason for that was because I was able to be present for it and make some real concrete decisions for myself in the moment that was all about me, even though people thought those decisions had to do with him. And, like people, like, for example, call the police. And I'm thinking in my head, well, I'll call the police, they come, he's big, 6'9", 7 foot, 300 something pounds. They shoot him. They kill him in my apartment. I gotta move. I was like, I ain't moving. I was like, and plus I got shit to do tomorrow. I don't have time for this. You know, and there was nothing else that was going to be taken from me that night.
Yeah.
And I remember my bestie was like, let's just leave. And I was like, somebody's leaving tonight, but it ain't me. So I think that what we have not been taught to do as Black women is to stand, and I think that's why Ntozake's work is so important, is to stand in our truth. And and I'm not saying that pain isn't relevant and okay. Pain is relevant and okay, but we have to confront it. And you know, once you meet it head on and you confront it and deal with it, then you can find your way through it. But we tend to get a nice little Tiffany box and put a nice little white bow on it and put the pain in there and hold on to it. And that's the heirloom that gets handed down.
And it's about breaking those cycles. And I think that's a very important point. And Oakley, I want to target this question to you. Someone from the audience was asking, because I know you spend a lot of time in rehearsal with the text. So someone asked, what lines from For Color Girls continue to resonate and resurface throughout your life?
Well, at least from Stuff, stealing my shit from me don't make it yours, makes it stolen.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of my favorites. Right? I think when I was younger, I used to love I found God in myself and I loved her fiercely. You know, the end, the very end, which is, you know, sort of the total loving the total body, the total experience, you know, seeing yourself as somehow deeply connected to the divine, which is what people have been trying to keep you from. And I'm really interested in Dianne. I think, Dianne, when you talk about, you knew what to do with what happened to you, right? You don't put it in a box, but you documented it. And to me, there's some power in documentation and saying this happened, you know, and you're not hiding it away, and it's not a mark of shame, but it becomes a testament. And then that testament also becomes something for others and not just for yourself. And I think the space of For Colored Girls is that, right? There's testimony in it. And, you know, when you go to church and you testify, right, it strengthens you in your conviction. It gets you ready to go back out into the cruel world. I mean, I'm not a super religious person, actually, but, you know, I did go to church. But, you know, so there is something about that. And I feel like you have Audre Lorde, you have Ntozake Shange, all of these incredible people who were saying, there are people who don't want me to speak. They don't want me to say anything, right? But even if they don't want to hear me, if something might happen to me, even if they do hear me, I'm going to speak anyway, because I was never meant to survive. I mean, there's that was my bastardization of that in Audre Lorde's, you know, Litany for Survival, when she talks about, you know, the fact that no one wanted us to live anyway. So we speak for each other. We speak because we want to live and thrive, and testify, I think, for others.
That's beautifully said.
That's really beautiful. And to that, I will say, I think I can remember to the first time this installation was done at the Schomburg, and I spent a lot of time at the Schomburg. And there were so many women of all ages that came in and did just that, gave testimony, because it was their engagement with the video of the women talking about somebody walking off with all of their stuff that had them recall moments of that happening and not having the realization until that moment that somebody had walked off with all of their stuff. And, you know, that is why I think what we do as cultural workers is so pivotal and so important. The giving of permission for people to feel and to think and to take people on unimagined journeys is a really powerful thing. I mean, I think that, you know, when you think about all of the tribulations in life and we have the power to express ourselves in other languages, I think it's phenomenal.
And someone has a question in terms of that. In terms of like the production and the work, as you both were working with the text, was there any new messages or aha moments that you discovered within Ntozake's work as you were putting together the theatrical piece and the installation? Oh, wait, no.
I know I have to think about it, but go ahead, Dianne.
Well, I think it was the first time that I saw the work as tapestry. From, all of the ways things were interlocked and interwoven. And I saw it as tapestry. And I think that's where I got the idea of the seven of us telling our stories, because there was this sort of tapestry of women expressing themselves and telling their stories. And it just made me think. And then I started to think about the mosaic of beautiful, strong Black women that are in my life. And I don't use strong in the sense of how the strong Black woman, because that's not something I subscribe to, but in what I consider strong, when we talk about that. But just thinking about the work, in this way of it just being this beautiful tapestry of words and color is what I saw it that way for the first time.
And I have to say, working on it at the Public, I just thought, wow, Ntozake, it's not just language, but it's breath. If you follow it, there, you follow the language, and you follow where she wants you to take a breath, the meaning will come. So I just thought, how deeply and beautifully structured and thoughtful it is, and brilliant.
And Oakley, I want to ask you a follow-up question. Someone from the audience wants to know, do you feel as if Sister Shange's concept changed from the original performances as it shifted from, to film and was directed by male energy? If you want to add your thoughts to that.
Well, first of all, I did not see the latest film. And the piece was directed by Oz Scott. It was directed by a man originally, right? Yeah. But I think, Ntozake did have a kind of sisterhood of women artists and poets who had been working on the piece since like San Francisco or Berkeley back in California. And, like Jessica Hagedorn, and, I think there are a number of people who were also a part of, like, I think that tapestry that Dianne talks about, right? There's a space that we try to make for each other as artists to explore, to experiment. So I feel like that carries into the language. But it's true that, I think I saw some of the PBS version that was an earlier version Ntozake was in along with her daughter. And it is interesting that they had to put men in. They didn't seem to have the imagination and the trust in the language that I absolutely have. And I don't know if it has to do with men or if it has to do with a particular sort of economy of making a film and, who believes how, the way it should be done. It would be interesting to really get it in the hands of some fabulous female filmmakers now and see if they could, how could they stick with the strategy and the imagination of not having to have male bodies in it. Yeah.
So I have two more questions before we go into our special performances. This one from the audience is for you, Dianne, in terms of the process of using the butcher paper. They want to know, was it meditative? And, what is the process of creating the work with the butcher paper?
Yeah, the butcher paper is definitely meditative, and it recalls things from our history. It's meditative because it recalls childhood memories of my granny out in the yard in Belize washing on her scrub board. The motion of my hand recalls the braiding of hair and being a kid and getting my hair braided. It's meditative because it recalls watching the kneading of bread. It recalls watching the aging of the Black women in my family and understanding that I'm creating these marks and imprints and histories in this paper, just as those wrinkles in the skin were creating marks and imprints as they were aging, some that I know and some that I will never know, but somehow they're embedded in me. So for those reasons, it's meditative, but then there's also a sound that the paper makes that becomes sort of meditative as well. I have a recording somewhere where I recorded just the sound of the paper, and there's something very, very sort of meditated about that sound and just hearing it.
I know it because I, had to help you crumple some paper. So it's a lot of work. It's very, very intense. It's a physical labor. It's really intense.
It definitely was. And someone said that to me, and they were talking about, and it was sort of like a critique of the work, saying that it was very theatrical and laborious and all of that stuff. And for me, I love that kind of conversation, particularly when someone thinks that they're critiquing it from, that, oh, it's so theatrical. Yes, I want it to be grand and theatrical because it's about me and people of the African diaspora. I want all of the glory, and I want all of the theatrics, and I want all of the drama. I want all of our histories, all of those things embedded in it. Let it
and
be.
It's about Ntozake, and she's theatrical and grand.
And it's about that. Like, why not let it reside and let it reside as such? Why not?
Yeah, exactly. That imagination, like the beautiful introduction by Aoife, like they, that richness of imagination, they were building and working on that from the get-go. It was sound, it was music, it was dance from a young age. So go ahead, Dianne. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I make those installations as grand and as
alive
as possible, particularly when I'm working from text by people of color. I just did one based on James Weldon Johnson's work. So it is important to me to be able to articulate those works in such grand ways.
And I think you both did an amazing job in celebrating and honoring Ntozake's legacy. And I want to, in the interest of time, I want to make sure we definitely get to our special performances. So I'm going to introduce our special performers. So we have first up a performance by the Barnard students directed by Mia Flowers, followed by vocalist, songwriter, composer, and educator Martha Redbone. Please enjoy. Thank you, Dianne, Okri. Enjoy the performances.
Thank you, Solio. Thank you, everyone.
Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff. Not my poems or a dance I gave up in the street, but somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff, like a kleptomaniac, working hard and forgetting while stealing. This is mine. This ain't your stuff. Now why don't you just put me back and let me hang out in my own self? Somebody almost walked off with all of my stuff.
And didn't care enough to send a note home saying I was late for my solo conversation or 2 sizes too small for my own tacky shirts. What can anyone do with something of no value on an open market? Did you get a dime for my things?
Hey man, where are you going with all of my stuff? This is a woman's trip and I need my stuff to ooh and ah about. Daddy, I got a mainline number for my own shit. Now won't you put me back and let me play this duet with the silver ring in my nose?
Honest to God, someone almost run off with all of my stuff. And I didn't bring anything but the kick and sway of it. The perfect ass for my man, and none of it is theirs. This is mine. Mia's. Her own things. That's my name. Now give me my stuff. I see you hiding my laugh and how I sit with my legs open sometimes to give my crotch some sunlight. And there goes my love, my toes, my chewed up fingernails. Nigga, with the curls in your hair.
Mr. Louisiana Hot Link, I want my stuff back. My rhythms and my voice, open my mouth and let me talk you out of throwing my shit in the sewer. This is some delicate leg and whimsical kiss. I gotta have to give my choice without you running off with all of my shit.
Now, you can't have me unless I give me away. And I was doing all that till you run off on a good thing. Who's this you left me with, Some simple bitch with an attitude? I wants my things. I want my arm with the hot iron scar and my leg with the flea bite. I want my callous feet and quick language back in my mouth. Fried plantains, pineapple pear juice, Sun Ra and Joseph and Jules. I want my own things. How I live them and give me my memories. How I was when I was there. You can't have them or do nothing with them.
Stealing my shit from me don't make it yours. Makes it stolen. Somebody almost run off with all of my stuff, and I was standing there, looking at myself the whole time. And it wasn't a spirit took my stuff, was a man whose ego walked around like rodent shadow. Was a man faster than my innocence. Was a lover I made too much room for. Almost run off with all of my stuff.
Innocence was a lover I made too much room for. Almost run off with all of my stuff, and I didn't know I'd give it up so quick. And the one running with it don't know he got it. And I'm shouting, this is mine! And he don't know he got it. My stuff is the anonymous ripped off treasure of the year. Did you know someone almost got away with me? In a plastic bag under their arm. Me. Dangling on a string of personal carelessness. I'm spattered with mud and city rain. And no, I didn't get a chance to take a douche. Hey man, that's not your prerogative. I gotta have me in my pocket to get around like a good woman should and make the poem in the pot or the chicken in the dance. What I got to do?
I gotta get my stuff to do it too. Why don't you find your own things and leave this package of me for my destiny? What you got to get from me? I'll give it to you. Yeah, I'll give it to you around 5 o'clock in the winter when the sky's blue-red and Dew City is getting pressed. If it's really my stuff, you gotta give it to me. If you really want it, I'm the only one can handle it.
Hi, I'm Martha Redbone, and this is my partner, Aaron Whitby, joining me today on keys. We wrote this song, and we dedicate it to the memory of Ntozake Shange. It's called God Created Woman. Hope you like it. Whoa, whoa. Blinded by light, guided by force, descended from heaven, just par for the course. Double X chromosome, and that was only part of the plan. Late in the night, on the seventh day, his rest was so magical, still had to create. Fearless and free, find you floating on the beat of her wings. Well, if that's forsaken, I must be mistaken, forgive me. But God created woman, might come from a rib, but that's only a story. I made you, and I can be your lover and your mother and your sister too. Better believe it's true. weave denims for life, a diamonds forever. We sail through the storm, just like Miami weather. A soul purpose soul, a smile for every beat of rain. Sent down for eating bad fruit, they blamed it on Eve. 2,000 years later, it's an apple a day. Will keep you satisfied. Just promise me I'll show you the way. Well, if that's forsaken, I must be mistaken. Forgive me. But God created woman, might come from a rib, but that's only a story. I made you, and I can be your lover and your mother and your sister too. Better believe it, forgive me, yeah. God created a woman, might come from a rib, but that's only a story. I made you, and I can be your lover and your mother and your sister too. Better believe it's true. Deep down inside our little hearts, too modest to say, compared to any man, we're light years ahead. Still got a long ways to go, but we're doing the best that we can. Well, if that's forsaken, I must be mistaken. Forgive me, yeah, yeah. God created a woman, might come from a rib, but that's only a story. I made you, and I can be your lover and your mother and your sister too. Better believe it, forgive me, yeah. God created a woman, might come from a rib, but that's only a story. I made you, and I can be your lover and your mother and your sister too. Better believe it's true, yeah. God created a woman, ooh. God created a woman, God created woman.
We wrote this song, which uses the beautiful, powerful, inspirational words of Ntozake Shange. I found God in myself, and I loved her. I loved her fiercely.
I found God in myself, and I loved her. I loved her fiercely. I found God in myself, and I loved her. I loved her fiercely. I found God, found God, found God. I loved her fiercely. I found God, found God, found God. I loved her fiercely. I found God in myself, and I loved her. I loved her fiercely. I found God in myself, and I loved her, 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 I found God in myself. 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 And I loved her, loved her, loved her. It's a lie, yeah. I
That was amazing, Martha. So I want to send a special thank you to our virtual audience for attending. Thank you so much. A special thank you to our speakers and performers, the Shange Estate, the Barnard College and Library team, and of course to Ntozake Shange. You have inspired us all beyond words and actions can show and demonstrate. Please visit library.barnard.edu for future updates on events and exhibitions. And in the chat, we submitted a bunch of different links, so please check all those out. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your evening.